Hello, everybody. I'm Grisel Salmaso, and I'm going to be presenting with Gonzalo Dominguez, who's a member of my research project. The title of this presentation, which is also the title of our research project, is Macrogenres Short Story and Academic Oral Presentation, Insights into their Genetic Macrostructure Potential and lexicogrammatical realizations of their constituents. The first stage of our current research project was called Literature from a Linguistic Perspective, Modeling and Teaching of Literary Genres and Response Genres. This project was carried out in the subjects Language 3 and Language 4 of teaching, training, translation, and research courses of study of the English department at Facultad de Filosofía y Letras, Universidad de Cuyo, Mendoza, Argentina. In these subjects, literary narrative texts are used as an essential teaching tool to foster students' development of different linguistic strategies or competencies. These texts provide the basis for students to work on and perfect their reading comprehension, as well as their written and oral production skills. That's why one of the purposes of our first stage of our research project was to model the genetic structure of the literary genre short story in order to apply that model to improve students' reading comprehension. And we also wanted to, or aimed at, modeling the structure of response genres to help students perfect their oral production skills. Actually, sorry, this is something that I should say here. Actually, we did provide, create a model of the genetic structure potential of short stories and a model of a genetic structure potential of the response genre academic oral presentation. So these are the members of a project. As I said, Gonzalo is one of the members of this project, and I'm the head of this project. The two objectives of this current project are to go deeper into the analysis of the genetic macrostructure potential of short stories and to give evidence at a lexicogrammatical level of a structure proposed before, and to give evidence at a lexicogrammatical level in terms of process patterns. And also to go deeper into the analysis of the genetic macrostructure potential and to give of academic representations and to give evidence at a lexicogrammatical level in terms of thematic patterns. In this presentation, we are only going to devote ourselves to the first objective, that is that has to do with the genetic macrostructure of short stories. So the theoretical framework of a project is systemic functional linguistics and the notions of genre, macrogenre, genetic structure potential, narrative genres or categories of narrative instances in systemic functional linguistics, that is, recounts, anecdote, narrative, exemplum, and observation, which we use for the creation of a model of a genetic macrostructure potential of short stories. And I have been mentioning macrostructure potential, and that's because we conceive short stories as macrogenres. And Martin defines macrogenres as a combination of elemental genres And in the project, we enlarge on Martin's definition, and we define macrogenres as a recurrent combination of elemental genres, which is a combination that is iterative and frequent and can be captured in generic microstructure potential. So the objectives of this presentation, more specifically, are to present the generic macrostructure potential of short stories that we proposed during the initial stage of the project, to show the advances on the generic macrostructure potential of short stories, more specifically, to show the elemental genres inserted in it, the new elemental genres that we have discovered are inserted in it, on the basis of 6 short stories that we have added to our sample. And also to show something new that we have found in the analysis of these 6 short stories, that is the relationship between the generic macrostructure and the titles of our short stories, the themes of our short stories, the main characters of our short stories, the focus on the main characters of our short stories, and the setting in place of our short stories. Then Gonzalo is going to be in charge of showing this relationship with one particular example of short story. Well, this is the generic microstructure potential of short stories. I'm not going to go in detail into too much detail because of time constraints. But what we have observed, or what we have, the conclusions that we arrived at in this first stage of our research project, were that the structure of a short story coincides with that of narratives of personal experience, narrative, or anecdote. So the short story, can have the structure either of a narrative or of an anecdote. So it has all the different constituents of these 2 narrative genres. But we observed that in each of the constituents of the narrative, for example, we have different inserted genres. And this is shown in this linear structure. For example, for the abstract and observation that we have also noticed are generally fused, we found that in the abstract and also orientation, there's generally an observation or a descriptive report inserted. Or in the record of events, there's generally a recount inserted. And we have also observed that the purpose of the inserted genre coincides with the purpose of a constituent of a general narrative or the general anecdote in which it is inserted. For example, the recount, that is a non-disruptive series, or that presents a non-disruptive series of events, coincides with the purpose of a record of events of an anecdote, right? Or of a record of events of a anecdote, for that matter. So then at the end of this presentation, I'm going to show the new findings or of this second stage of a project and how they have affected this generic microstructure potential. So in this, I have been saying that we have enlarged our corpus or our sample, and we have added 6 more short stories from the collection called Pieces, a collection of new voices, edited by Stephen Chbosky. And the special characteristics of these short stories is that they were written by unknown authors or new authors or novel authors. In the analysis, we have compared the generic structure potential of these new short stories with the the generic structure of these short stories with the generic macrostructure potential of the short stories we proposed. And we have tried to find similarities and differences in terms of generic structure. And we have found a very special difference that is what I mentioned before, the fact that we have found a relationship between the structure of short stories and the title, the themes, the focus on the characters, on the main characters, the setting of place and time, etc., which is what Gonzalo is going to show now in his example.
Thank you, Grisel. As Grisel said, I'm going to show you one example of the new short stories we have analyzed. And in this case, I'm going to talk about The White Carousel Horse by Dennis G. Gillingham. So this text narrates the story of a girl who wants to escape from her rough and unsettling household. She's obsessed with a white carousel horse that her parents take her to ride regularly. And this horse represents her freedom. Whenever she rides the horse, she feels like she's free and does not need to care about her nightmares or the screams and crashing noises she hears at night. Therefore, one night she decides to run away from home to go ride her white horse. After some obstacles, she's able to turn on the carousel and mount her white horse. However, while she's riding her faithful stallion, she sees lights approaching and the carousel starts to slow down. As Grisel mentioned before, one of the project's new findings is that we could establish a relation between the structure of the short stories and the title, themes, and symbols of the stories. This becomes clear in The White Carousel Horse, in which the general structure of the text, which coincides with that of a narrative, resembles a carousel as anticipated by the title. The story starts with a fusion of an abstract, an orientation, and a record of events, which represent the initial spins of the carousel. Then we find a first disruption, which represents the carousel's maximum acceleration. After that, there is a second disruption, which represents the carousel's first deceleration. And finally, the story ends with a resolution and a coda, which represent the carousel's second deceleration. If we go deeper into the structure, we find that all the constituents of this narrative have different genres inserted in them. In the fusion of abstract orientation, the descriptive function of the orientation is realized by a taxonomic report, and the abstract events by an observation. The record of events is realized by a recount, which coincides with the generic macrostructure potential already proposed. The first disruption, then, contains several inserted observations and recounts that help to express a feeling of speed or a speed sensation, as these types of text generally represent action as a snapshot frozen in time, as Rothery and Stengling claim. Then in the second disruption, we notice that there are narratives and anecdotes inserted that slow down the pacing of the story, as they present evaluative constituents which produce a suspension of the narrative action, which in turn gives a sensation that the carousel is slowing down, as in the slide, we can see an action slowdown of the story. Then we have a resolution that contains an inserted recount, which shows that the carousel is still spinning, despite the fact that it has decelerated. This recount does not contain, or in general, recounts do not contain a disruption and do not require resolutions or reactions, which would make the story continue. And that is the reason why it gives us the feeling that the carousel is decelerating and it has almost come to a stop in the story. Finally, in the coda, we find an inserted anecdote which slows the speed of the action and shows the girl's final reaction when her parents come to take her off her savior stallion, which is expressed as event and final reaction in the coda. As we can see in this other slide, we have produced a graphic that represents this relation between the structure of the story and the carousel's initial themes in the first constituents, abstract orientation and records of events, the carousel at full speed in the first disruption, and then the carousel slowing down in the disruption 2, the resolution, and the coda.
Okay, thank you, Gonzalo. These are some of the conclusions of this second stage of our project. We have noticed that in the new text analyzed, there is a clear relationship between the generic microstructure and the title, the themes, the symbols, the main characters, the setting in place of the story. This characteristic was not evident in the short stories written by renowned authors like Ray Bradbury, which we analyzed during the first stage of the project. And we believe that this characteristic found in the new stories can be related to the fact that the authors are new authors, novel authors, who possibly do not have a personal or well-defined style and who probably write closely following the narrative strategies they know that they have learned, that they have been taught. One of our objectives was to identify the differences and the similarities between the short stories written by renowned authors and those written by novel authors. And this is the only difference that we have found, which is not a small difference, it's a very interesting difference, but the only difference that we have found so far. And why is it that I say that there's the only difference? Because there are actually no differences in terms of generic structure, right? Or generic macrostructure. The generic macrostructure of new short stories coincides with the generic macrostructure potential we proposed. And one of the reasons why we decided to enlarge our corpus was to be able to describe in more detail the generic macrostructure potential, right? To give it more delicacy. And in this respect, we found more elemental genres inserted in the constituents of the short stories. And we also specified the function of those inserted genres. And a clear example is the one that Gonzalo presented in his example of a wide carousel force, where observations are used to weaken the pacing or the speed of action of a short story. Okay, so this is the linear structure of a the linear representation, sorry, of a generic microstructure potential that I presented at the beginning. And this is the same generic microstructure potential with just some descriptions in more delicacy of different inserted genres that are possible to find in the different constituents of this, either the short story as a narrative or a short story as an anecdote. And what we have also seen is that some of the constituents of a genre, like the reorientation of a narrative, which was previously an optional constituent because we hadn't found any short story with a reorientation. Now, as we have found short stories with a reorientation, we say that that is an obligatory constituent at this stage, right? So the changes have been marked in red. Okay, this is it. Thank you so much. And this is the bibliography that we have used for this presentation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.